Liam tilted his chair back just enough to make it look effortless, his laughter cutting through the soft hum of rooftop music. He held up his phone, swiping through glossy photos that gleamed under the glow of pendant lights. "This one's from Cabo," he said, showing a sun-drenched shot of a tall brunette in a silk dress, champagne in hand. "Her dad owns one of those AI firms, massive funding deals coming in every quarter." The table burst into a mix of impressed whistles and playful jabs. "Man, you traded up," one friend said, nudging his shoulder. Liam raised an eyebrow, grinning. "I had to upgrade. Couldn't keep dragging dead weight through my future." Another friend laughed, slapping the table. "You're savage, bro." Liam shrugged. "It's not personal, just business. Some people build you up, others slow you down." He took a sip of his drink, confident, untouchable. Down on the street, Emma weaved through pedestrians, a paper bag cradled in one arm, phone screen glowing with route updates in her other hand. Her delivery cap was pulled low, curls tucked behind her ears, uniform wrinkled from the long day. As she paused at a red light, she looked up without thinking, and there he was. Liam, seated above the world like he belonged there, laughing, like nothing had ever cost him anything. Their eyes locked, just for a second. He smirked, not cruelly, not kindly either, just like he always did when he thought he had the upper hand. Emma blinked, then looked away and crossed the street. The paper bag felt heavier in her arms. She didn't stop walking. In her mind, it replayed as clear as the day it happened. They were at the cafe on 3rd, the one with chipped mugs and too loud jazz. She sat with her hands wrapped around a cup of tea, the steam long gone. Liam didn't even look at her when he said it. "You don't fit where I'm going." No build-up, no apology. Just a sentence dropped like a weight. "You're great, Emma, but I'm aiming higher now. I've got things lined up. Investors, new circles. You'd hate it." She didn't cry. She just sat still until the tea was cold enough to drink in one gulp, stood up, and walked away. That had been over a year ago. Her phone buzzed. Another. Order? Luxury suite. Midtown. She tapped to accept, shoulders squared, feet already moving. The night breeze lifted the edge of her delivery jacket as she walked, unnoticed in a city that never stopped to ask why someone had to work this hard. The train ride was silent, packed with strangers looking past each other. She stood in the corner, holding the bag carefully, swaying with the rhythm of motion. Across from her, a couple whispered over shared earbuds. A teenager scrolled through his phone, eyes half open. Her reflection in the glass was tired. Not broken, not bitter, just tired. When she arrived, she had to show her ID to the concierge. The building rose like a sculpture, steel and glass twisted into some architect's expensive dream. "Delivery for 24B, she said quietly. The man barely nodded before buzzing her through. She took the elevator alone. The walls gleamed so clean she could see her own nervous hands. Each floor chimed softly as she ascended. Her heart beat steadily, not from nerves but from habit. Deliver, confirm, move on. It was just another stop, just another handoff. She told herself that twice. The doors slid open to a hallway lined with framed abstract art. No noise, no motion. She walked toward the door marked 24B and adjusted her cap. Her fingers hovered over the doorbell before she finally pressed it. She didn't know whose home this was. What name was behind the marble and quiet wealth? She didn't know that the moment the door opened, something would shift. Not with loud drama, but with the quiet certainty of a path crossing again at just the right time. The door opened almost instantly, but not in the way Emma expected. No staff, no butler. Just a man, barefoot with rolled-up sleeves and a calm energy that made the space around him feel quieter. He looked to be in his late 30s, lean, composed, the kind of presence that didn't try to impress but somehow did. "Anyway, you must be Emma," he said, a warm tone to his voice, like he wasn't rushing her or judging her for showing up late. "Sorry for the delay," she replied, shifting the paper bag in her arms. "Traffic was—" He raised a hand gently. "Don't worry about it. I like people who hustle. Means you've got purpose." His smile was genuine, not the polite mask she'd gotten used to seeing on faces in buildings like this. "Come in for a second? I'll grab cash." She hesitated, but he was already walking toward another room. She stepped inside carefully, feet landing on soft hardwood floors, the scent of cedar and clean linen in the air. The place was quiet, too quiet for a house scattered with children's books and plush toys on the floor. A half-assembled wooden train set sat on the coffee table, next to a tablet with a cracked screen and a tiny blue sock draped over the edge. No kid noises, no stroller in sight. Just signs of life paused mid-movement. Emma stood by the door, hands neatly at her sides, glancing around only enough to register the space. This wasn't just wealth. It was lived in, but curated. Someone had put their heart into this home. The man returned, holding a small stack of bills. "Here's your payment, and a bit extra, for climbing up here with that heavy bag." She gave a polite smile, reaching out. "Thanks. Not necessary, but appreciated." He tilted his head. "Not many people know how to build something from scratch. I can always tell when someone's doing it brick by brick." She nodded, unsure how to respond, but the sincerity in his voice lingered longer than expected. Before she could say anything else, he was already walking her to the door. "Take care, Emma." She stepped back into the hallway, still not knowing who he was, just that he was different. Not in a romantic way. Not yet. Just different. 2 days later, she was at a second-hand bookstore downtown, skimming through the self-help aisle for a cheap business planning guide. She hadn't planned to be there long. Her break was short, and the bookstore's warmth made her sleepy. But as she turned a corner near the poetry section, she almost bumped into him again. He was crouched near the bottom shelf, a paperback in his hand. He looked up at her with the same relaxed recognition. "Emma," he said, like it was natural they'd cross paths again. She blinked. "Hi, Mr. Nate," he offered, standing. "No titles, just Nate." She gave a soft chuckle. "Didn't expect to see you here." He held up the book. "Looking for something less intense than board meetings. Thought I'd try poetry." She raised an eyebrow. "That's rare." "So is someone who knows how to deliver food without acting invisible," he replied. They stood there, not quite friends, not quite strangers. Just two people letting the conversation breathe on its own. "You live alone?" she asked quietly, remembering the toys. His gaze softened. "No, but the house is quieter these days. My nephew was staying with me for a while. He's back with his mom now." Emma nodded, sensing that was all he intended to share. "Well, I hope he's doing okay." He seemed to study her then, not just her face, but the way she stood, how she didn't push for more, how she asked like she cared without trying to collect his story. "Listen," he said after a pause, "I'm hosting a small charity event this weekend. We're short on hands. Nothing fancy. Setting up, handing out programs, helping with guests. It pays. Would you be interested?" She blinked, caught, off guard. "Why me?" He smiled again, that steady, assured smile. "Because I've worked with people who show up late in suits and leave early for excuses. You showed up late and still gave me your full attention. I trust that more than à résumer." She hesitated, but only for a moment. "Okay, I'll help." He nodded, scribbled something on the back of a business card, and handed it to her. "Saturday, noon. Wear whatever lets you move fast." Emma looked down at the card, then back at him. "Thanks. Nate?" He gave her a slight wave as he turned toward the cashier. Emma stayed in the poetry aisle for a while, not buying anything, just standing there wondering when the last time was that someone looked at her like she might belong in more than just the service line. Emma arrived an hour early wearing black slacks, a white button-down, and comfortable flats. She pulled her hair into a clean bun and walked into the event hall with purpose, not hesitation. The venue was sleek, polished wood floors, hanging lights shaped like stars, and elegant white cloths draped over tables that hadn't yet been touched by guests. Staff bustled quietly, setting up buffet stations and floral centerpieces. Emma went straight to the coordinator Nate had introduced her to, offered a firm handshake, and immediately got to work. She didn't talk much, just moved through tasks with focus, from arranging the donation table to double-checking name tags. She helped an older volunteer figure out the QR code for the silent auction and guided a confused guest back to the registration area without making a fuss. She didn't need to be the face of anything. She just needed to make sure nothing slipped. By the time guests started arriving, Emma was near the coat check, guiding people and handing out programs. She blended into the event as though she'd always been part of it. Her badge read Event, Support, and most people didn't even look at it. They looked past her, just another worker making sure the night ran smooth. And then Liam walked in. She didn't notice him at first. Her eyes were on a late vendor, tracking a tray of desserts that hadn't been set out yet. But then she heard a familiar laugh, just a few steps too loud. She turned. He was in a navy suit that screamed wealth, his arm draped around a woman in a dress that shimmered with unnecessary sparkle. The woman smiled like she was on a red carpet. Liam whispered something in her ear, and they both laughed. Emma felt her stomach clench. Not in heartbreak, not anymore, but in that sharp, ancient way you feel when someone who once made you feel small walks into your new life without permission. She stepped behind a table pretending to organize brochures. She didn't need to be seen. She just needed the moment to pass. But Nate noticed. He was talking to a donor when his eyes flicked across the room and caught Emma's subtle shift in posture, the way her head dipped and her hands moved just a bit faster. Later, after the speeches were done and the room had quieted to a warm buzz of soft jazz and clinking glasses, he found her in the hallway refilling pamphlets near the exit. "You all right?" he asked casually, leaning against the wall beside her. She didn't stop moving. "Fine. Just making sure this area doesn't look empty." He tilted his head. "Did I unknowingly invite your past?" She paused, then smirked, not bitterly. "Yeah, but it's fine. He's dressed well, so I'm guessing he's where he wants to be." "You handled it like it meant nothing," Nate said. She turned to look at him. "Because it doesn't. Not anymore." There was silence for a moment. Then he smiled faintly. "Most people wear masks. You don't." She didn't know what to say to that. So she said nothing. As the night wrapped, she stayed behind, helping load leftover items into boxes, stacking chairs, and folding tablecloths. Nate passed her once, or twice, always glancing but never interrupting. By the time she clocked out, she was exhausted in the way that felt earned. The next morning, she got a text from an unknown number. It was Nate, short and simple. "Come by the office when you're free. Want to run something by you." Emma showed up the next afternoon in jeans and a clean shirt, unsure what to expect. Nate was at his desk, papers spread in neat rows, reading, glasses perched on his nose. He looked up, motioned for her to sit. "I've been thinking," he said. "You've got an eye for details. You handle stress better than half the people I've hired. And you don't get flustered. I'm expanding a couple of projects and need someone sharp managing logistics full-time. It's yours if you want it." Emma blinked. "You barely know me." He leaned forward. "I know enough, and I trust what I've seen." She hesitated, heart pounding. "It's a lot. I mean, I've never held a job like that. I don't even know if—" "Then learn it," he said simply. "That's what builders do. They learn fast." She stared at him for a long second, then nodded. "Okay. Yes." The days that followed felt like stepping into a world she had watched from behind glass. She had a desk, an email address, a planner with color-coded tasks. She wore smart clothes, brought her lunch, stayed late when needed, and kept a notebook for everything. The work was fast, demanding, but not overwhelming. And every time she doubted herself, she remembered the way Nate had said, "Learn it," like she could. She didn't see Liam again. Not at events, not in the city. And she didn't need to. A week later, she opened a small envelope placed on her desk by the HR team. Inside was a navy blue badge clipped to a clean black lanyard. Her name was printed in clear white text. Emma, Reed, Executive Assistant, Infinity Foundation. She stared at it for a while, her fingers resting lightly on the edge. Then she clipped it to her blouse, stood a little taller, and returned to her work. Emma's days started earlier now. Her mornings were packed with calendar meetings, briefings, donor calls, follow-ups. The to-do list stretched longer than she liked to admit, and even when the office lights dimmed in the evening, her brain kept racing. She told herself she was lucky. This was a step up, a real role, a chance to prove herself. But some nights, when she got home and tossed her bag onto the couch, the silence in her apartment felt heavier than it used to. She hadn't seen her dad in weeks. The job kept her too busy. Or maybe she'd just been avoiding the past, afraid that if she looked back, the woman she used to be would come crawling back too. But Saturday morning, she took the train south. No appointments, no blazer, just a hoodie and jeans. Her father lived in the same apartment building. Third floor, same creaky elevator. He answered in a t-shirt that had seen better days, smiled, wide when he saw her. "You look important," he said, hugging her. "What, no entourage?" They sat on the old balcony with mugs of tea. He listened while she talked about logistics software and keynote invites and the sudden pressure of being reliable. Then she fell quiet. He studied her. "You're doing good, Emma. I see it in your eyes. But don't let success make you forget you're allowed to be loved." She smiled at that, but something in her chest tightened. Back at work, Nate noticed the change. Emma was still efficient, still sharp, still on time, but something in her had pulled back. She avoided small talk, skipped the casual post-meeting chats, left just a little earlier than she used to. He didn't push. Not at first, but one evening, as she was finishing up a sponsorship summary, he knocked gently on her office door. "I'm meeting a few investors for dinner tomorrow night," he said. "Low pressure, but I'd like you there." Emma paused, fingers still on the keyboard. "Me? You're not just good at systems," he said. "You're good at people." She nodded, unsure but willing. "All right." The next night, she wore a sleek black dress, simple, professional, nothing loud. Her hair was pinned neatly, her heels modest. She entered the private dining room confidently, not knowing that one of the seats would test everything she'd just started to believe about herself. Liam was already seated, leaning back, wine glass in hand. He looked up and froze. His expression flickered. Recognition, then surprise, then discomfort. Emma didn't flinch. She took her seat beside Nate as if Liam wasn't there, unfolded her napkin, and smiled at the woman across from her who was discussing a new initiative in underserved schools. Liam tried to catch her eye, but she never gave him the moment. Later in the evening, after the main course, as Nate stepped away to greet another guest, Liam made his move. He rose from his seat and approached Emma near the drink station. "Emma," he said, lowering his voice, "can we talk for a second?" Before she could answer, Nate reappeared at her side. Calm, measured. "Is there a problem?" His tone wasn't cold, just final. Liam hesitated. "No, just wanted to catch up." Nate gave a polite nod. "Maybe another time. Emma's part of my executive team. She's got people waiting." Liam stepped back. "Sure, of course." Emma watched the exchange quietly, then walked with Nate back to the table. She didn't speak until they were both seated again. Then, softly, she said, "That was him." Nate didn't ask who. He didn't need to. "You okay?" She took a breath. "He left me when I didn't look like this. When I wasn't standing next to people like you. Sometimes I wonder if people only see me now because of where I ended up, not who I am." Nate looked at her carefully, his voice even. "Anyone can win the lottery. Only a builder earns the land." She blinked. "What does that mean?" "It means you didn't land here by luck. You showed up, you built, you stayed steady. That's not something people just fall into." He smiled gently. "You built this, piece by piece, and that matters more than where you came from." Emma sat, still for a moment, the noise of the restaurant fading around her. For the first time in a long time, she felt fully seen, not as a project or a surprise or a charity case, but as a woman who had climbed, endured, and earned every step forward. Nate hadn't looked at her like she was lucky. He looked at her like she belonged. And that difference made all the space she needed to breathe. The ballroom shimmered with soft golden light, filled with quiet music and sharp suits. Emma stood beside Nate near the stage, her name printed alongside his on the elegant event program. Founders of the Horizon Mentorship Initiative. She wore navy tonight, simple, structured, elegant. It wasn't about impressing anyone anymore. It was about presence, ownership. When the MC announced their names, polite applause rippled through the room. Emma stepped up to the mic and gave a short, honest speech. She spoke about the power of having someone believe in you before the world does. She didn't name names. She didn't have to. The room listened. Cameras snapped all evening. By the next morning, her inbox was full. News blogs picked up the story. From delivery girl to director. The woman behind the Billionaire's new mentorship project. Photos of her speech. A candid one shot of her laughing with a student from the pilot program. The attention was surreal. Some comments were warm. Others were less so. Liam's girlfriend posted a video on her story, clearly directed, if not named. "It's cute when people pretend they were always meant to be at our table," she said, sipping from a crystal glass, her tone dripping with faux kindness, wearing borrowed confidence like it's couture. Emma didn't respond. She didn't need to, but Nate did. He posted a simple photo of the gala stage. Emma, mid-speech, backlit by the soft glow of the event lights. His caption was short. "She's everything people try to imitate, except she did it without noise, without shortcuts, and without anyone holding the door open." The post exploded. Within hours, Emma was trending on small business networks and mentorship blogs. Some people praised her, others speculated. But for the first time, the narrative around her wasn't just about who she used to be. It was about what she'd built. That evening, Liam messaged her. It was brief, polite, cautious. "Hey, saw the news. Can we talk? Just for a few minutes?" Emma stared at the screen for a long time before replying. "One coffee." That's it. They met in a neutral spot, a quiet cafe near the park. Liam wore a wool coat and carried himself with the same old confidence, but his eyes searched her face with something else now, something quieter. "I just wanted to say," he began. "I was wrong." Emma stirred her coffee, silent. "I didn't see it before. You, your potential, everything you were. I was immature. I chased something that looked like success, not knowing it had nothing to do with the clothes or the parties." Emma let the silence stretch. He added, "When I saw you up there, I realized you didn't just move on. You grew. Past me. Way past." She looked up, steady. "I used to think you leaving broke me." Liam opened his mouth to speak, but she held up a hand. "But now I know it pushed me into becoming someone I actually respect." He nodded slowly, guilt in his eyes. "I'm sorry." She took a sip of her drink. Calm. I appreciate that. And I forgive you. He exhaled, almost relieved. Maybe someday we could reconnect. Emma smiled, not bitterly, gently. I'm getting married. Liam froze. His fingers gripped the edge of the table. You're… what? She set her cup down. To someone who didn't need to upgrade to feel like a man. His mouth opened slightly, but no words came. She stood up, pulling on her coat. Take care, Liam. And she walked out. No drama, no final punchline. Just the quiet sound of a woman who no longer needed closure to close the door. The invitations were handwritten. No gold trim, no wax seals, no influencers in attendance. Just names that mattered. Family, a few close friends, people who had seen them through the climb. Nate didn't want spectacle. He wanted honesty. I don't need the world to see us, he told Emma, taking her hands in his. I just want to promise you in front of the people who won't forget it. The ceremony was held in a small garden tucked behind a library. Green, quiet, peaceful. Emma wore a cream satin dress, with no train, no veil, just a pair of earrings her mother once wore. Her father walked her down the aisle. His grip wasn't tight, but steady. At the end of the path, he kissed her cheek and whispered, "You've always belonged somewhere better. I'm proud it turned out to be with someone who sees it too." Nate waited under the arch of vines, smiling, no tuxedo, just a dark suit, and a small flower on his lapel that Emma had picked herself. The vows were simple, no big declarations, just steady voices, warm eyes, and the kind of love that doesn't need to be explained. The photos were never meant for the public, but the world found them anyway. 2 days later, blurry phone shots made their way online. Emma in her dress, smiling softly. Nate holding her hand. A caption quickly caught fire. The billionaire's mystery bride. Speculation followed. Comment threads exploded. Strangers built narratives around a woman they'd never met. Some kind, some cruel. But Emma didn't read the headlines. Somewhere, across town, Liam sat at a bar with a half-empty glass and a glowing phone screen. The TV behind the counter flicked between celebrity gossip and market news. No one said anything as the bartender slid a new drink his way. His friends sat beside him quiet. The same men who once laughed with him about upgrades didn't make eye contact now. Liam didn't speak. He just stared. Meanwhile, Emma walked through the quiet halls of a familiar place, her old diner job. The bell above the door rang, just like it used to. The same counter, the same chipped tile. The manager, grayer now, turned and blinked. "Emma?" She smiled. "I just wanted to say thank you. For the night shifts, for the patience. You didn't know it then, but you gave me room to stay afloat." He looked at her like he wasn't sure if this was a dream. "You were always sharp," he said finally. "Didn't expect to see you on TV, though," Emma laughed. "Me neither." They hugged briefly. No big moment, just gratitude. Later that week, she and Nate toured a new construction site, a future home for the second branch of their foundation. The location had been Emma's idea, right in the neighborhood where she used to deliver food, run errands, wait on tips to make rent. Now they were building something that would last. She walked through the skeletal frame of the building in a pair of soft beige heels, her hand resting in Nate's. The concrete wasn't polished yet. Dust clung to her hem. She didn't care. The streets outside hadn't changed much. Same corner store, same graffiti on the brick wall near the alley. But now they looked different. Not smaller, not sadder. Just like chapters she'd read all the way through. She turned to Nate and squeezed his hand. "We're really doing this," she said. He looked at her, calm as always. "You always were." Emma stood in front of a small group of teenage girls, her hands gently gripping the edges of the podium. Behind her was a large screen displaying the name of the workshop, Build Beyond Survival. The room wasn't fancy, just a converted classroom with folding chairs and a whiteboard. But the faces looking up at her were wide-eyed, curious, and waiting. Her voice wavered slightly at first. "I used to think success meant being invited in," she began, "that someone had to choose you before you could matter." She paused, clearing her throat, eyes scanning the faces. "But then I realized, you don't need permission to build your own place. You just need to stop waiting and start walking." Her voice steadied as the words began to flow. She told them about small beginnings, missed buses, and sleeping 3 hours between shifts. She didn't mention Nate, or Liam, or any of the headlines. This wasn't about the man she married or the man who left. It was about the woman she became in between. By the time she finished, her palms were damp and her shoulders tight. But when she looked out, every girl in that room was still with her, listening, believing. She stepped down to light applause, her heart pounding, unsure if she'd said enough or said it right. In the back row, Nate leaned against the wall, arms crossed, smiling, not the kind of smile for the cameras, but one made of quiet pride. He didn't clap loudly. He just nodded once when her eyes met his, like he already knew she would rise to this. That evening they sat in their garden, surrounded by the soft rustle of leaves and the scent of blooming jasmine. No words were needed. Emma sipped her tea, her feet tucked under her while Nate read quietly beside her. The silence was full, not empty. It hummed with everything they didn't have to say anymore. Later, she opened her laptop to check emails and found one that made her freeze. Subject: Invitation to speak at the National Women's Leadership Summit. It was from her old workplace, the same nonprofit where she once begged for weekend hours and where she'd once eaten dinner out of a vending machine in the back room. The new director had seen her recent work, her foundation's outreach, her speech clips. They were inviting her to be the keynote speaker. Emma read the message twice before leaning back in her chair, a soft laugh escaping her lips. "Something funny?" Nate asked, looking up from his book. She turned the screen toward him. "They want me to give a keynote." He raised his eyebrows. "The place that gave you 20-hour paychecks and zero gratitude?" She nodded. "That's the one," he smiled. "Full circle." Emma grinned, then said quietly, "Funny what happens when someone believes in you." Nate set the book down. "You believed first." Later that night she pulled out a small box from the back of her closet. It was old and slightly bent, filled with keepsakes, things most people would have thrown away. Her first Metro card, a faded notepad filled with scribbled delivery times, and at the bottom her old delivery badge, creased, the plastic cracked at the corners. Next to it, she gently placed her wedding ring box, the one from the ceremony no one expected, the love story no one scripted. She looked at both items for a moment, then closed the lid slowly, her voice barely above a whisper. Sometimes being left behind is how you find where you belong. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more cinematic, emotional stories.